Welcome to Texas PTA's Delegation is Key, one of our extra credit resources for PTA leaders. You may have heard, if you want a thing done well, do it yourself. This quote is often attributed to Napoleon Bonaparte, self-declared Emperor of France. There is no doubt that he did, in fact, accomplish much. However, it was often by plundering others and elevating himself, and in the end, his desire to do it all his way led to his demise. We don't want that to happen to you on your PTA journey. So instead, we would like to counter that notion and use John Maxwell's quote, "If you want to do a few small things right, do them yourself. If you want to do great things and make a big impact, learn to delegate." Let's begin. The Cambridge English Dictionary defines homework as to study a subject or situation carefully so that you know a lot about it and can deal with it successfully. So no, I am not assigning you tasks that you must do and return to be reviewed, but what I am doing is providing you with reference tools that will allow you to approach delegation differently. Without doing this type of homework, you are setting yourself and your teammate, committee member, or direct report up for failure. The first tool we are going to focus on building out is the what. We have to determine up front exactly which items it makes the most sense to pass off to someone else. This can be done through the lenses of personal introspection and our always trusty PTA bylaws and standing rules. Today we are going to look briefly at two exercises that can be used to complete your personal introspection. First is the Eisenhower Box. It is a quadrant tool designed to help distinguish between urgent and important tasks and non-urgent and unimportant tasks, and everything in between. Next, we have the three category lists. The three categories of stop doing, others could do, only I can do, helps to chart the course of deciding which items truly could be taken off your plate. We will dive a bit deeper into each of these exercises in the next two slides. But before we leave this one, it is important to point out that unlike in a lot of situations you might find yourself needing to delegate, in PTA we can always fall back on the delegation of tasks determined by our bylaws and standing rules. Be sure to check those to make sure you aren't accidentally stealing someone's joy by doing their job yourself. Let's dive in a little deeper into the Eisenhower Box Matrix. This tool was created by Dwight D. Eisenhower prior to becoming our 34th president while he was serving in the Army. You can see in the diagram that we have labeled the axes and the interior portions of the boxes to help us see what we can put into each box. To use this tool, you would want to sit down with your to-do list and place each item based on its urgency and its importance into the appropriate box. Of course, time and place will have an impact on this decision, but let's try it out with a task that many of us are familiar with, such as an executive board meeting. Items you need for an executive board meeting might include the agenda, a slide deck, an email reminder, reports, speakers, reservation of a room, technology setup, printing of an agenda or reports. At first glance, all of these might appear urgent and important, but if you dive a little deeper, you'll see that while the task is important to the event, it is not important that you complete the task. So let's look at how we could take some of these items off of the chair's plate. We will just take a couple of these items here first. What about the email reminder? An email reminder, either of the meeting itself or to submit reports, is an important part of conducting a meeting. But is it important that the chair of the meeting do it? No. So this item would be placed into the urgent but not important section of the matrix, which we will also call the delegate box. And now there is another question. Who could do it instead? We will tackle that with our next tool. How about the slide deck? When you come right down to it, it is nice to have a slide deck for a meeting, but is it really necessary? If you were coming down to the wire and had to choose to create a slide deck over getting enough sleep to feel ready to lead the meeting, I would hope you would be able to say a slide deck isn't important and it's not urgent, which places it in the delete or eliminate box. It's not worth a good start to the next day just to get this nice to have task completed. Now let's look at using the three category lists to decide what you could delegate to the rest of your team. As Nick Blevins explains Jim Collins's work on delegation using the 3 categories of stop doing, others could do, and only I can do, he says that the stop doing items aren't necessarily worthless, they are just non-essential. Items that fall under others could do are the areas where someone else has at least 80% of your skill set for the task. And then the only I can do are the bare minimum items that should simply be done solely by the person in your position or with your skill set. So let's go back to our executive board meeting preparation tasks. First, we determined that sending the reminder emails were urgent, but not so important that you had to do them, and placed them in the delegate portion of the Eisenhower box. In the 3 categories, we are saying that it would go in the others could do list, specifically because we think someone on our team has at least 80% of your skills to create and send the email reminder. It is entirely possible that you will find that the person you delegate it to has way more skills in this area than you do. But first, knowing that you have the confidence in them is going to help you let go and give them the confidence to do the task. In the case of the slide deck, using Nick Blevins' description of the 3 categories, I think we can say that this is not an essential task, and there isn't really a need to say that someone else could do this better, assuming all of the information would be in your head, which puts it into the non-essential area, meaning that if you had time, great, you could get it done, but if not, no big deal either. The non-essential list described by Blevins falls very close to Jim Collins's stop doing list. It is important to truly think through the items that fall in this category because according to Jim Collins, the stop doing list is just as important as your to-do list. Back to our homework. The next tool we are going to build out is to whom can we delegate? While we mentioned that briefly in our previous slides, going through these exercises will help create a list of people who you know you can count on when it's time to delegate the big stuff. First, always use your bylaws and standing rules as the places to start with whose job is whose. Truly, we want to give unto Caesar what is Caesar's, meaning that if the job is listed as a specific committee, but you've been doing it just cause, you are stealing their joy and aren't allowing them to feel part of the team. We also should take advantage of those 4 little words, other tasks as assigned. Most of the time, those words are attached to the first VP because they serve as the president's right hand and should help make the president's job a bit easier. However, look closely because you might find the clause attached to multiple positions. It's a great way to be able to share new tasks as they come up throughout the year. Next, remember people are not mind readers, so they won't just appear when you wish for help. You are going to need to ask for it. In a CNBC April 2020 article, a few of the reasons people were afraid to ask for help were outlined. People are worried that others will see them as incompetent, or afraid to give up control, or concerned that they will be rejected. Do these reasons sound familiar? These match up quite well to the reasons people give as to why they don't delegate. But according to Psychology Today, asking for help is a sign of emotional strength and part of just being human. We weren't designed to work alone. So now that you have asked, and some people will volunteer right away, maybe ones that you weren't expecting and maybe weren't the ideal candidates you were looking for. While everyone is not a perfect fit for every job, there is a job for everyone. Don't say no to those who offer to help. Find places where they can put their gifts and talents to good use. Here's just a little bit more homework. Our third tool is to develop is how. This might literally be more important than either of the previous 2 because this is where you set everyone on the right path. We definitely don't want an opportunity for delegation to be an opportunity for more work by either the delegator or the delegatee. In order to do so, we need to make sure that we all work on a clear set of expectations and that we offer an opportunity for personalization. Clear expectations can be set by designing a rubric or showing examples of quality work. When you hand off a task to someone, they should know what the expected outcome should be. Brené Brown in her book Dare to Lead provides a great tool to do just this called Paint Done. We will go into that thoroughly on the next slide. One of the most crucial aspects of delegation is having the person fully take on the task as if it were their own. Ownership, according to Carbon magazine, and satisfaction are more motivating than money. And that's definitely a good thing because we don't make a salary as a PTA volunteer. You've probably heard the story of the janitor at NASA who, when asked by President Kennedy what he was doing, responded with, "I am putting a man on the moon." Although his connection to the focus of the entire country at the time might have been minimal, he knew that if the floors weren't kept clean, there would be a distraction from getting the job done. He owned his part of the final product, and we want to make sure that the people we delegate to do so as well. One of the easiest ways to give that ownership to someone is to allow them to do it their way. We have to remember that 3 plus 3 equals the same thing as 2 plus 4. They are just two different paths to get the same answer. Let's dive into Paint Done just a bit more. In Dare to Lead, Brené Brown tells the story of being at a conference and needing help getting ready for the next day. It was going to take surveying the conference attendees, calling through the results, and having her team present the results to her in a clear, concise manner. However, in her haste, she didn't give all those details. Brené only said she needed the attendees surveyed so she would know where to focus the next day's discussions. So when she woke up in the morning to a bunch of surveys pushed under her hotel door, once she took a moment to collect herself, she realized that her team had done just what she said, and no further. From that point on, they implemented Paint Done, which is a process of going back and forth until both parties are in agreement of the final expectations. We must provide clearly how we intend to use the product being produced by outlining the full purpose of the task or product, not just the how-tos, and provide time for two-way conversation to ensure that there are no holes in the assignment. Brené says this didn't happen overnight, but just about every time she hands off a task to someone on her team, now they respond, "Paint it done for me," and it's made all the difference. After figuring out the what, to whom, and how of the delegation process, it's time to complete the delegation process by doing the handoff. Michael Hyatt, a well-known leadership development author, blogger, and podcaster, developed 5 levels of delegation. He determined that each task and each person needs to have their process of delegation customized. You can't delegate the same way to everyone, and you can't delegate each task the same way. It is important when you have decided the who that you know the skill set of that individual before handing off to determine at which level of delegation to start. The first level is do as I say. In my own words, I call that stay in the lines. In this level, there is very little room for creativity. It could be that you're handing off the process to chair the election of next year's board because you are one of the candidates and you feel awkward chairing that portion of the meeting. However, there are very clear guidelines that must be used when chairing an election. There is no wiggle room. Just get the job done, please. The next level, research and report, otherwise known as hunter and gatherer, in this level of delegation, you want the person to go out and find out some information through a variety of ways and then gather it all back up and present the information to you. No decisions are being made. Information is just being collected. In a PTA world, this could be a group of people who are working on finding a vendor for spiritware. The decision needs to be made by the full board, but someone has to go get the information for all the vendors so that they can decide and work to make that decision together. They get to choose which vendors to report back on, but really, it's just the facts, ma'am. The third level, research and recommend, or as I call it, let's talk it out, but in this level, the task involves research again, but this time the chair, VP, or committee is given the leeway to make a recommendation. Possibly this is a spiritware shirt design. They hold a contest with the students all submitting design, and they narrow the offerings down to a few and make a recommendation on which one they think will sell the best. But it might be that someone else, like the principal or president, needs to make the final call. So with this one, there is more room to personalize the task, but in the end, the ball is in someone else's court. The fourth level, decide and inform, or show and tell, allows for much more of the work to be done and for one doing the delegating to be able to hand it off and set it to the side. In this situation, you are asking the delegatee to handle the task, but to make sure that you have been told of the end result or their final decision. Think about the book fair chair, who has to select next year's dates 6 months in advance. It is part of their job to handle this task by working with the vendor, but the president would need to know the final decision in order to get it into the appropriate calendars. Think of this process as one that doesn't allow for any surprises. Lastly, we have act independently, or as I like to call it, yo-yo, also known as you're on your own. In this delegation situation, you are giving your delegatee as much room as they need to get the task completed, and you are going to fully support the results. In this case, thinking about your advocacy chair setting up a candidate forum with League of Women Voters. You hand off that task and you really don't want to think about it again until it's time to attend. They get to make the decisions regarding where the event will be held, who will moderate, and how questions will be gathered from the audience, etc. It's their show and you are just there for backup. No matter what level of delegation the task at hand requires, checking in is crucial to maintain peace of mind for the leader and to allow the one taking ownership to be able to feel successful as they are proceeding. No one likes to be micromanaged, but also it's hard on both parties for the assignment to just be out blowing in the wind with no framework for communication. Here are 3 ways you could set up schedules. Short deadlines. Items that take no more than a week to complete. Since the turnaround is so quick, checking in on how things are going probably causes more harm than good. Medium deadlines. Items that take a few months to accomplish. In these cases, it is good at the beginning to establish when you want certain pieces of the project to be ready. This is especially important if the approval of one of the portions of the tasks impacts the direction of the rest of the requirements. Long deadlines. Items that could take half to a whole year to accomplish. These are things that you will want to get regular reports around. Set up several opportunities to touch base with what is expected at each check-in outlined and agreed upon before setting the person off on their assignment. Remember, often the buck stops at the top. So as former U.S. Senator Brian Dorgan said, you can delegate authority, but you cannot delegate responsibility. The end result of any item that is delegated falls back to the one who did the delegating. Letting people run with a given task for a long time without any communication only leads to confusion and misinterpretation of the expectations, and in the end could cause more work, and no one wants that. Keep in mind, delegation should be considered a value add to any position. It really isn't something that you could do. It really isn't something that you get to do. It's something you must do in order to protect you. Without delegation, we will end up with a dry well within ourselves and an empty pipeline outside. Simply put, delegation spreads the workload, empowers others, creates collective successes, provides shared knowledge, and builds leaders. To become more familiar with the topics in this presentation, you may want to check into these articles. This slide is also available as a PDF at texaspta.org/training/leadership. Thank you for attending Delegation is Key. To learn more about delegation as well as many other leadership skills, check out our full resource library at texaspta.org/training/leadership.